passion, drive, persistence, resilience, love. All qualities that shape and define us. Join the Cyber Warrior as he helps shape your path. This is Walk With Me. Welcome back to Walk With Me, a cyberwarriorstudios production. I'm your host on this journey, the Cyber Warrior. Now, getting back to people asking questions, I had a question asked, and I believe I may have covered some of this before, but I think it's very important to go over again, just because there may be some different information we can toss out there for you. And so really what it comes down to is work-life balance. So the question in essence was, how do you maintain a work-life balance? And for this person, it was in the IT career field, being that my primary career is in cybersecurity and IT. However, I want to relate this as much as possible to everything. I mean, the goal is, honestly, for me to reach as many people as possible. So a lot of the information that I'm going to put out there isn't just for IT, all right? Because you can actually take this and use this no matter what your career is. And really, work-life balance comes down to setting limits for yourself. So there's another podcast I listen to, and they talk about scheduling their time. So if you have a job, let's say, and you work 9 to 5 or 8 to 5 or whatever the case may be, then that time is set aside for work. What you have to do from there, and as long as you're not in a job that requires you to be on call, and even if it does, you can still do this, is those are your work hours. Once that time ends, you now cut off from work and you take that time to do whatever else it is you want to do, whether it's be with your family, work on a hobby, or do something, go outside, go to a restaurant, whatever the case may be. But it's setting those limits for yourself and setting that time aside for yourself. And that includes study time, whether it's first thing in the morning before you start work, or maybe before you go to bed, setting aside that hour or 2 hours to improve your career, to improve your time and the way you're using your time. We spend a lot of time doing things that aren't necessarily going to improve our careers. And again, this goes back, whether it's watching TV, reading books, or whatever the case may be, books that are about, fantasy and things of that nature, not necessarily books about atomic habits or anything like that. So when you are reading fantasy and fiction and all this other stuff, or you're watching TV and you're watching YouTube or whatever, and it's things that aren't going to further your career, that's not necessarily a bad thing, because we all need an escape. We all need time away. But you should still be taking time and scheduling time within your day to improve yourself. So if that's, like I said, taking maybe an hour before you go to bed or before you get ready for bed to work on, I don't know, something that you're studying. If it's for your career field, if you're a doctor or a lawyer, maybe it's reading a new law or looking up a new technique for diagnosis. If you're in IT or cybersecurity, it's researching a new tool or working on a lab or whatever the case may be. But you should always be finding that time and scheduling that time to improve upon your abilities. While simultaneously, you also need to schedule that time for your family. And these are things you have to do for yourself. No one can make you do it. A lot of times when we look at work, and there's a new term out there called quiet quitting, which I completely disagree with, but the premise is that people are only working the hours that they're supposed to. And they're not doing, they're not going above and beyond, or they're not working 12, 13, 14-hour days or whatever the case may be. And the reason for that is because finally people are taking into account their mental health. They're scheduling their days to where you have me at this job for these hours. After that, I'm on my own time. If I want to continue working, I can. But I'm ultimately scheduling my time so that I can take time for myself, for my mental health, for my family, whatever the case may be. And that is how you work out your work-life balance, is you put yourself in a position and you set boundaries. You set boundaries at work. You set boundaries for your home life. You set these boundaries so that you are a little bit more structured in the way you do things. Because a lot of us, when we don't set those boundaries, when we don't limit our time in certain instances, then we end up overloading ourselves, or we feel like we can't accomplish everything within a day or a week or whatever the case may be. But we can. We just aren't disciplining ourselves to actually sit down and focus on what needs to be focused on. We're always trying to do something else while multitasking, essentially, which, to be honest, I say I'm a multitasker, but the reality is it's impossible, because you're not giving 100% of your attention to something. You're splitting your attention, which means even if you're multitasking, it's going to take you longer to accomplish those tasks. So get out of the mindset of doing more than one thing at a time. Focus 100% of your attention at work on the task at hand. That way, when the time comes for you to clock out, you're actually done. And you're setting those boundaries that whatever I'm not done with at this point in time, unless there's a due date that it needs done today, it can wait till the next day. If you have something scheduled, like a date night with your significant other, or, time for yourself to just sit back and relax and have a drink or whatever, just to relax your mind and get more at peace with yourself. If you're going outside, going for a walk in the woods, or going hiking or rock climbing, as long as you're scheduling that time, you have to take that time for yourself. And if you don't do these things, then you're going to sit here and think a lot of the times that it's your job making you do all this stuff. You're going to think it's the place that you work, when if you've never set those boundaries in the first place, 9 times out of 10, a company is going to look at you as someone who just works and works and works. And because of the society we live in, because we are under this impression that we have to work more to get to where we want to be, instead of realizing that if you focused more during your work hours, then you wouldn't necessarily have to work later, because you're getting your work done. And when your work is done and is done at 100%, and you haven't split your mind a million different ways, then you no longer have to do extra work to excel at your job, to excel at whatever it is you're doing, because you're fully focused on that one task at a time. So I think what I'm getting at here, actually, I know what I'm getting at here, is it's that scheduling portion. We talked about it when I first started this podcast, about planning and goals and all this other stuff. When we've talked about burnout, is you have to realize that scheduling your time and planning your days, and I don't mean planning all your activities, but your days of, okay, I'm going to work from this time to this time. I'm going to take these hours and spend with family. I'm going to take this hour before bed and just kind of relax and I'm going to meditate or whatever. I'm going to take this hour and I'm going to study a new topic. By doing that, and you develop a regiment to doing that, not only are you always moving forward because you're leveling up, you're doing things to improve your career and your life, but you're also taking that time for yourself. So even though if you don't take those weeks off that you may need for work, to just get away from work for a week, even if you're doing that, you will get to a point where that is a huge benefit and will keep you from burning out, but you'll be able to last longer by scheduling your day, by saying this time to this time, I'm doing this. From this time to this time, I'll be with family, or I'll be by myself, whatever situation you're in, or friends. From here to here, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to watch YouTube videos, or I'm going to do what have you to further your education. And then from the last hour before bed, I'm going to relax. I'm going to just be in the moment, and I'm going to find my peace, and I'm going to settle my mind before I go to bed. That way, when you lay your head down and you go to bed, you can actually get a more peaceful rest. So keep that in mind, that no matter what we do, we have to start planning things out. That way, not only are you going to excel at your career because you're going to be more focused during the day, but it's going to be a lot harder for you to burn out in your career because you're taking that time for yourself. You're not limiting your mental health. You're not minimizing the importance of your mental health. You're showing the same importance to your mental health that you are your job, that you are your family, and you're making sure that you can do all those things. So don't ever think that one thing is more important than the other. Yes, I mean, technically we are more important. you should always take care of yourself. Your mental health, yourself, is more important than your job. Your job is going to replace you if you leave. If something happens, they're going to put that job description out on the market and they're going to, hire someone to replace you. We understand that. But at the same time, we need money and we need to work. We need to be able to survive in this society. And so as important as mental health is, so is focusing on your work. That way you can continue to make money and to survive and even do some of the luxuries that are out there that a lot of us enjoy, whether that's going on vacation or watching TV, whatever it is. You have the ability to do it. That's what I'm getting at, is always be planning. All right. Plan your days, plan your weeks, and get disciplined with it. The more often you do something, the more often you write something down, the more frequently that you make sure that you accomplish these activities like planning and setting goals and, all these other things that we've talked about, the more it becomes a habit and the more disciplined you get with it, which makes your life a lot easier. So just take that into consideration. But yeah, otherwise, I think that's really about it. That's how I maintain my mental health, is I sit here and I look at the things that I've done, and I don't get me wrong, I have worked myself to the bone between the military and everything else that I've done. There were times in my career where I didn't set those boundaries, where I didn't, set limits on my work hours. And if I was on vacation, I was still taking calls and doing these other things. It took a long while for me to get to the point to realize I have to set boundaries. I have to have a schedule of, okay, I'm working at these hours, I'm with family at these hours, and I have time for myself at these hours. So you're not alone. Nobody's alone in this. We've all suffered through it and, put our mental health and that work-life balance to the wayside and just worked nonstop. But if you realize that it's a problem, if you realize you're taking time away from things that are important to you, like your family, like your mental health, like your friends, in these relationships that we've built, then you have to start making sure you take the time for them. If you don't, then it's only going to get worse. So you're going to have to learn and you're going to have to find that time. And again, planning is the biggest thing to do it. Scheduling that time, making sure you can do it. So I hope that helps, because that is something that is very, very important to me, is your mental health, is being able to take that time for yourself and to find who you are inside and what's going to help you mentally and everything else. So with that, I do hope this helped you out. Otherwise, look, as always, I have to leave you with some words of wisdom. That's just how I do. That's how this show goes. So before we go, let me leave you with a few words of wisdom. Now, these words are very important, and once again, they come from the Havamal, and it's stanza 44 for this one. And the reason these are important is because we were just talking about scheduling time for friends and family and things of that nature. So, as it goes, if you have a good friend and you really trust him and want good to come of your friendship, you should speak your mind with him, exchange gifts, and visit him often. And the reason that this stanza is so important is because we just talked about scheduling that time of being with friends and being with family. So you don't have to consider this just a friendship thing. This can be your family, this can be your significant other, this can be your kids, whatever it may be. It's finding that time to spend with others and really appreciate what they bring to the table. Now, otherwise, once again, this has been another amazing episode of Walk With Me, a Cyber Warrior Studios production. If you would like to leave a rating, please go and do so down below. And feel free to look at all the ways you can support this show and all of my other awesome content in the description in the show notes below. Take care, and I will see you all next week.